report you as nuts. Wouldn't be surprised if someone just got fed up and off her.
She was my aunt.
Heart of gold, though.
Roger Cobb has come here alone.
Daddy?
But no one is ever alone in the house.
This house knows everything about you. Leave while you can.
No!
It has been waiting for him.
Hi.
Sandy.
Now, it wants you. Horror has found a new home. House. Enter at your own risk.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Star Cub Review. I'm your host, as always, Star Cub. Now, tonight's review is going to be on a classic 80s horror comedy movie that I still think is absolutely great all these years later, and that is House. This horror movie / comedy for me growing up is absolutely fantastic, and revisiting it last night was a thrill. It's always one that I always go back to revisit at some point. It's just one of those movies, really. It was produced by Sean S. Cunningham and the director Steve Miner. It is absolutely fabulous to see the amount of practical effects that was used in this. It's very practical heavy, and it's absolutely sensational to see all these years later, in all its goofy, campy quality. My God, some of it is just so campy, but I love it. I absolutely love it. And it's a particular type of horror where it's not over the top with blood and guts and all this, just mountains of blood everywhere and guts and gore. It has some of that, but it's done in such a way where it makes it more comedy horror. And some of the music choices in this film, in some spots, is just like, oh my God, I never picked up on just how weird some of the music is placed in this film, which makes it even the more bloody campy and just outrageous. But it can have some of its elements of horror that can be terrifying in spots, especially with the elements of losing a child, just completely losing a child and disappearing. There's that element, the haunted house elements, the auntie that committed suicide, and then you go back to live in that house, and then you start experiencing all these weird occurrences. You start hearing your son, seeing him, and you see other things every night at midnight, and then it just gets weirder and weirder from there. But I will say the cast is absolutely fantastic for 1985. The cast: William Katt as Roger Cobb, George Wendt as his neighbour, Richard Mole as Big Ben. Absolutely amazing Richard Mole in this film. Big Ben, terrifying. I always remember the zombie version of Richard Mole's character, Big Ben, absolutely bloody terrifying as a kid. And Kay Lenz as Roger Cobb's wife, who is an actress in this film. So the premise is William Katt's character Roger Cobb and his wife Kay Lenz Now, she plays Sandy Sinclair, his ex-wife, should I say. They basically lose their child. Their child goes missing, Jimmy. He goes missing without a trace, and they don't know where he is. He's an estranged author, a troubled author. He's trying to write his next book, which is all based on his experiences in the Vietnam War and how his best friend died during that time in Vietnam. And to top it off, his auntie, who lived in this haunted house, commits suicide, hangs herself. And then basically it goes from there. He inherits the house, he stays in the house, and then he starts seeing things. But there's flashbacks as well to when Jimmy goes missing, and she indicates that it's the house took him, it's the house, this house tries to deceive you, it knows everything about you. And it basically goes, it gets more batshit crazy as we go along. But there are some very heartfelt moments in it, and some very some really scary moments in it. When I rewatched it, I was like, I remember the exact spots that I always scared the crap out of me. And there's a particular scene, practical effects, makeup, it was absolutely brilliant, where Sandy Sinclair turns into this really fat, ugly-looking demon, prostitute-looking thing, with big teeth, and she was bluish purple, and it was just absolutely mad. I remember shotgun, flying sickles, and big shears, and all of that. It was absolutely insane. And House is one of those films for me growing up that was I absolutely loved it. No matter how much more I got terrified, I'd do a rewatch, re-rent it at the video store just to watch it with close friends when we had sleepovers. It was just one of those films that it really resonates why I have a big love for 80s horror films. The VHS covers, the grainy effect that the VHS used to give you. It just the nostalgia just feels so incredibly wonderful. Like revisiting all these old films from the 80s, whether it be comedy, drama, science fiction, horror, you name it. I'm absolutely just, my love for 80s never dies. It's one of those periods where I think I resonate more with than the 90s. Though I remember lots of things from the 90s, the 80s for me, even though I was born in 86 and didn't see a lot of the stuff in the early 80s until, way later on in the 90s, I still remember the early 90s when I watched those films and was like, I was absolutely just fell in love with them, especially 70s horror as well. Where it all started for me was Ridley Scott's 1979 masterpiece, horror in space classic, Alien. That's where my love for horror films started. My dad got me into Alien at 5 years of age, and I absolutely fell in love with Alien, and one of my all-time favourite films, especially Aliens as well, James Cameron, but Ridley Scott's 1979 movie Alien really got me into horror, and that's from the 70s. So, and then my love grew from there. But House, directed by Steve Miner, fantastic. I all these years later, I still think that it is dark, it is gritty, it is funny, it's campy, it's over the top. Use your imagination. But some of the things that this film doesn't explain all that well is, not that it's a problem, but see, with a remake, you could go in the direction where you explain more why the house is haunted, why the auntie explained everything, like the house knows you inside and out, it'll trick you, why the house took his son it can dive into those deep aspects of the real dark haunted house theme. And also, Roger Cobb being haunted by Vietnam War and what he saw in the Vietnam War. His best friend died, and why the house is doing all of this. But it never really explains why this particular house that his auntie lives in becomes haunted in the first place. Like, why does she know all this? And it tricked her, and that's why she had to hang herself. She had to get out, but that's the only way she got out. So it traps you, sort of thing. And it never really explains that, why the whole mystery behind the house being haunted as it is, why there's doorways. But his mother knew things. His auntie, sorry, not his mother. His auntie knew things, especially with the paintings that she does. You got to pay very close attention to the paintings because they tell a story. And I would love if there was ever a remake or a complete reboot where it would go dark and gritty and really keep have some campy in it, but keep it really dark and supernatural and scary and, have a bit of blood, but not so much. And this film really does prove, even for an R-rated film, it can still be campy and fun and have blood in it, but it's not what you think when it comes to blood and gore. It was just fun. It was just fun to watch. And for me, even though House doesn't explain a whole over lot and doesn't go in depth, it keeps the mystery there as to where do these things come from? Why do they particularly go after him, and why did they go after his auntie? Is there some sort of special connection? Why this particular house? And it just fascinates me, especially with Roger Cobb's auntie's paintings. She knew things, and her paintings depicted that. And it's really fascinating to see all these years later that I still think it holds up really well in terms of practical effects. It really does, even though the story isn't, too much to, let your imagination wander. But it really does go to show you that even with really small budgets, you can make something that lasts forever in nostalgia value, especially when it comes to people that are huge fans of 80s horror films. For me, those sort of horror films, House is one of those ones where I can revisit again and again and again and again, and it's always going to hold value to me and other people that really love that whole 80s aesthetic. And it's just fascinating to see on some level that, in the years to come, we may not have physical media anymore. It may all be digital. That's why, it should be a lot of people advocating to keep physical media, especially now. Guillermo del Toro is one of the biggest advocators for physical media. And I absolutely full-heartedly agree. Physical media, especially with all the older stuff, 60s, 70s, 50s, all that sort of stuff that people want to see and, collect, really needs to be preserved, because everything going digital now, especially in the age of computer games, everything's apparently going digital, and we may not have any physical copies of those anymore. And it really sucks that everything, there's no big companies and that just hold no value in why collectors collect this stuff and the value of it, and why we need physical media, because I like physical media over digital. Digital is just crap to me. You don't own it. They can take it away from you at any point, especially if that company goes defunct. You lose it off your digital device or your Xbox or whatever. PlayStation, you name it. That's what's happening these days. And you practically don't own any of your physical media on your TV either, from, not physical media, your digital media, not your physical media, but your digital media on your TVs from Amazon and, all of them, like from those third party renters and stuff like that. You don't physically own it, and they can take it away from you at any stage. So, and especially if they go defunct or that they're just they're no longer around, they pull that off. So you can see that there's a need for physical media. I mean, I collect VHS, and you know, I'm one of those ones. If I see a VHS tape and it's something from the 70s or 80s or even early 90s, I have to pick it up, because especially horror, and some sci-fi and some kids old Disney, you know, 80s Disney, 70s Disney, that type of Disney. I don't like any of the newer stuff that Disney is just spewing out these days. It's just, it doesn't feel the same as old Disney. So I pick up all the old stuff, especially when it comes to horror. VHS, I love the covers. That's what I grew up on, especially going to the video store. That's what I went in there for. The actual covers on the VHS tapes. That's what really set off why I love the 80s, the aesthetic of the video. Just seeing that on the artwork on the VHS tape. And now, you don't get that. Blu-rays and, you know, DVDs, you don't get all that really sick looking 80s or 70s aesthetic, or even 60s aesthetic. It's just all generic nowadays. The posters aren't anything to cry about, you know, to ring home about. Yay, this looks really cool, I just bought this, and it doesn't look, the cover of the Blu-ray doesn't look all that well, whereas a VHS tape, give me a VHS tape any day and I'll show you the artwork and it'll be like, yep, that's why I watch that's why I collect VHS, because, you know, the artwork just sells it, and there's always something nostalgic about a VHS tape. But other than that, what do I give House? For me, is going to be a solid 10 out of 10. As campy and fun and stylish as it is, it's a 10 out of 10. I'm not gonna bullshit you. It's a 10 out of 10. It's fun. It you know, it's not scary to me anymore. It's not scary in the way that, you know, oh my god, I just jumped out of my seat. But I can always put myself, when I was a kid, into that whole, and go, oh, that's where I jumped when I was a kid. Or I could see myself watching it as a kid and go, yup, that scared me as a kid. Yup, that was horrifying when I was a kid. It's always fun to do that with horror films, because the older films as well, because I always have it ingrained in my mind. I know exactly I know the exact point that I got scared as a kid and was like, oh my god, this is scary as shit, but you know what? I love it. But other than that, thanks so much for tuning in, guys. This video is done. This review is done. I know it's a little bit longer than my previous videos, but hey, I really needed to speak about House and just the whole aesthetic of it. You know, 80s producer Sean S. Cunningham. He's produced a lot of horror films. His studio has, and it's absolutely, hands down, amazing. Steve Miner directed House, went on to direct some other 80s and 90s and TV shows as well, episodes. It's just great that I can always relate to the 80s over a lot of the stuff from the 90s and even today. And there's very specific things I like from the 2000s, and there's stuff that I like now that is absolutely incredible. Horror over the last few years is back with a vengeance, and it's absolutely amazing to see. But other than that, just wanted to get this one out, and I will have a game review up, my final review for Super Mario RPG on the Super Nintendo. I finally finished it the other day, and I've got to do my final review of it. But thanks so much for tuning in, guys. I really appreciate all the views, the watch, the comments. For horror fans out there, tell me what you guys love watching. What do you like from the 80s, 70s, 60s? You name it. Drop me a comment. Feel free to email me anytime and ask any questions, any questions you have for me, or just want to discuss movies or games or anything like that, especially horror movies. I mean, I'm a huge fan for horror movies, so I will talk about that until the cows come home. But yeah, I just really appreciate it. Thanks so much, guys. Don't forget to click like, subscribe, and the notification bell to keep up to date with all my content. And I will be back with another video in the next hour or so. All right, catch you later. Bye.